Welcome to Econ Nerds Live, a celebration, a discussion of economics. We are on a mission to make the world less dumb about economics, one podcast at a time. I'm your host, Matt Hill. With me, as always, Ariel Slonim. Ariel, how's your week going?
It's going well.
It's Thursday morning as we record this. The Fed cut rates yesterday, right? Was it yesterday the vote that they cut by a quarter point, I believe?
It was a quarter point, Matt. You're already answering quiz questions for the week.
Oh no. Okay. This is on the quiz. Big show today. I want to start talking a little bit about recession fears. Then we'll have our news quiz. Then we'll have a bunch of segments. Ariel, I'm bringing back not investment advice, where we make some investments. I have a new segment called "The Economists Are Fighting," where I will break down a beef between two economists out there in the news, in the world. Maybe we can judge the winner, and then we'll have our Econ in the Wild, Econ Illiterate, all that. So what I was thinking about this week is, are we going to have a recession? There's some warning signs that maybe there's a recession coming. Ariel, do you know the joke about economists and recessions? Have you ever heard this famous econ joke?
It's got to be the joke where Johnson only wants a one-handed economist, right?
So there's that joke, and I think it's Truman. I think it's Truman who wants the.
Okay.
So Truman says, I want a one-handed economist, because economists are always like, hey, gives their opinion, and then they say, on the other hand. So it's very hard to pin down an economist. The joke I was thinking about is that economists have correctly predicted 9 of the last 7 recessions. That's the joke I was thinking about. Have you ever heard that one? You never heard that one?
No.
Oh, okay. Hey, new one. But I was thinking, I was inspired by this Jadrian Wooten article, where he looks at the amount of cardboard sold, and so the amount of cardboard sold has gone down, and he's like, oh, this is a warning sign of perhaps a recession. So if you're thinking about trying to predict a recession, you want to look for these leading indicators. How can I suss out that maybe a recession's coming? How can I find some data that maybe people haven't thought about? And so he says, look at this cardboard. The cardboard quantities are going down. Actually, I can share it. I think I have it. So let me just share it. I have the data. I can do it. Here we go. So this is what it looks like. And so this is the industrial production of cardboard, and so we can see it's dropped a little bit in the last year. Although if I look at this, it just looks like a kind of downward trend from the pandemic. It just looks like an overall downward trend. So Ariel, what do you think about this cardboard indicator?
I mean, I think I'm assuming the link here, Matt, is that, Amazon orders cardboard to deliver all of its packaging, or all of its, packages. And so, as Amazon and other retailers are ordering fewer boxes to ship things, that means, people are purchasing less, right? So they're cutting back on maybe some spending, right? And the easiest spending would be maybe your Amazon count of things that you maybe don't need, but thought were exciting to get in, a day.
Yeah, exactly.
That.
You don't buy it? You buy it? You buy it?
Yes and no. So I'm going to be a two-handed economist here, Matt.
Oh, okay. Here we go. On the one hand, on the other hand.
On the one hand, I buy it. I myself have been trying to decrease my Amazon purchases. But on the other hand, sometimes Amazon ships me 5 different things in 6 different boxes somehow, right? So maybe retailers are getting a little bit better at packaging, or they're working on being, reducing costs and shipping things together. I'm just not sure that there could be other reasons, maybe they're switching to those bubble mailers or something. I could see some other stories that are going on here, some other changes that aren't just driven by consumer spending decreases. So
yeah.
this data to me seems like it could be messy. It's not a clear indicator.
And I've noticed too that Amazon has seemed to switch where they're like, hey, why don't you have them delivered all on the same day instead of having these things all delivered all over the place. So I don't know if it's a flashing red light. And like I said, it doesn't even look like it's really, like if you look at the numbers, listeners who are just listening, not watching, there's like this massive decline in like 2022, where you would be like, oh, there's the recession. So this recent decline, maybe not so worrying. Have you heard of these different alternative indexes that potentially can signal a recession? Like there's a couple out there that people have proposed, like, hey, you should look at the price of this good, or you should look at the sales of this good. They're actually very predictive. So there's a couple famous ones. I don't know if have you ever heard of any of these,
So
Ariel?
this is lipstick, right?
Yes,
Index.
lipstick. There's a lipstick index. Can
I've
you
heard the other
explain it?
one is haircuts, women's salon cuts. Because they're so expensive, people start spacing them out longer. So instead of the every 6 week haircut, you stretch it out to, a few months.
Yeah, exactly. There's that. So there's also the men's haircut, which I desperately need one, by the way. But mine is not income related; it's just time related. It's a long time to go get a haircut. It's like it's a whole thing, Ariel. Like I don't know how you do it. I don't know
It's
how often you
hard
get
for
a
me
haircut.
to imagine that your haircut is long compared to mine.
That's true. That's
For
true.
listeners, I have very curly hair, and I get a curl cut that cuts every single curl individually, and I pay a dear
Whoa,
price for that. But
whoa.
it's more time consuming than yours, Matt, is what I can
I'm
do.
sure. I'm sure. It's just the whole process. It's a whole big production. You got to go there. You got to wait. Then they're doing this stuff. So yeah. So they got the cardboard index, lipstick index. Do you know what that one's about? Have you,
So lipstick sales go up during
yes.
recessions because women feel like that's the cheap luxury they can afford. They're cutting back on something more expensive, whether that's a haircut, a vacation, something else. And so to make themselves feel good, they go out and buy lipstick.
Yes, and I believe like Estee Lauder was the one who proposed this one. And so the big ones I found. So we have Jadrian's cardboard index. We have the lipstick index, that I think was proposed in like 2008 or something. And then the other big one is the men's underwear index, proposed by Alan Greenspan, who was the chair of the Fed. And he said, well, I don't know. Can you guess what the argument with men's underwear is?
So I think the argument would have to be that you're going to delay purchasing them, right? That
Yeah,
nobody's going to see that, or at least fewer people are going to see your underwear. And so then
right.
you're not going to refresh them as often.
Yes,
But
exactly.
I have to think it is like your haircut problem. Like, how often do you think about it? And once you get to the point that your underwear has holes, don't you just replace them anyways?
Uh, Ariel, I don't know if I want to admit this. I don't know where my underwear comes from. I have no idea. It just seems to appear. Like, I don't know if somebody orders it for me. I don't know if I'm using the same underwear that I've used for like 20 years. I have no idea. It's just, I have a bunch of underwear. It seems to appear. It seems to replenish itself. Like, it's not really something I've ever thought about. Maybe people get it for me at Christmas. Maybe my mom buys it for me at Christmas. I have no idea. But I don't think I've ever bought underwear in like 20 years. Like, I can't ever remember like the thought in my head, I need to buy some underwear, let me log on, buy it up. It just appears. But anyways, those are our big indices: underwear, lipstick, cardboard. I looked at the lipstick and I looked at the underwear, both of them. Well, first of all, they're very hard to find data. Like the Federal Reserve has, I think, the price of underwear, but there's no like, it's not, you can't just like grab the data. But the data I was able to find basically don't show any sort of flashing indicators. Actually, and also they doesn't really show that they're that predictive of a recession. Like if you look back at like the underwear prices, it's not like the price goes down always when there's a recession like you'd expect. So I don't even know how predictive these alternative measures are. So we are sort of left with our actual measures, our actual like macro measures, which is just the standard inflation, unemployment, GDP measures. And so if you look at those, it's like, okay, GDP is fairly strong. The unemployment rate is fairly low. And the inflation rate is higher than we'd want it to be, but it's not crazy. So none of the data are like, really, really yelling like, hey, watch out. But I think if you go deeper, there are some concerning signs. So if you look at this is if you take all the different inflation measures. So there's the consumer price index, which is like what consumers pay. There's the producer price index, that's what producers pay. And then there's the PCE, which is like sort of this like sort of tries to get like a better basket of goods, basically. If you look at those, they all are accelerating upwards. So if you take the median of those, they all seem to be accelerating, not decelerating. So that seems to indicate, we might be in for a little bit of high inflation here towards the back half of the 2020s. And then with the employees, of course, we saw the job numbers, and the job numbers, even though the unemployment rate is low, it looks like hiring is pretty weak. And so this is, for listeners, I'm showing the change in number of employees, and it does look pretty weak. On the GDP front, I think there are concerning signs. So this is the energy price, and so the energy price is exploding recently. And I think one of the bull cases for the Trump presidency was that he'd be good on energy, like in terms of like loosening restrictions, we build more, and that has not really been the case. We've loosened restrictions on nuclear, but like he sort of cracked down on the clean energy. And so in terms of like energy prices, this is a bit of a canary in the coal mine, that these energy prices are going up, and ultimately that's like the fuel of the whole economy, is like what the energy prices are. And then lastly, if you're concerned about a labor shock, we have these deportations, which is hard to get data on, but remittances are way up. So this is money being sent back home, like money being sent to other countries. And so if you look at remittances to Central America, you can see very, very huge spikes in money being sent to these countries, which would indicate the immigrants that are here are sort of fearful of being sent back home. So they want to get their money back home. So if you think about it, like, all right, inflation is not beat. Inflation looks like it's going up. Employment seems, even though unemployment rate's low, it's soft. And then there are sort of these warning signs for growth. Anyways, so yeah, so I started with the alternative indices, and then I sort of just went to the real ones, and I was like, oh, I'm actually a little concerned. And I'm also further concerned about the Fed rate cuts because of that inflation. The inflation looks high. I don't know. Sorry, I said a lot, Ariel. If you have any commentary.
I've thought that a recession is coming for a very long time. So I guess I'm the 2 out of 7 economists
Well,
who think
what
it's
year
been
was it? I
coming.
think when the Fed started to increase rates when inflation was high, I believe like 100 out of 100 economists said, hey, we're going to have a recession. And then we didn't have a recession. Ariel, can you think of another alternative index maybe that might predict a recession? I'll give you the one I came up with, and you can judge it if you'd like.
Okay. I'm going to say, before I know what yours is, that restaurant spending might be a good recession indicator. That maybe
Uh,
you come on eating out, like take out to eat restaurants. Like, are you switching down to fast casual? So, like, are you switching to a Chipotle or a Sweet Green over like a fancier
right.
out to
Yeah,
eat meal?
that's a good one. That's a good one. I didn't look at that. I looked at consumer defaults, like default on like mortgages, default on loans, and it looked fine. Here's the one I thought about was pet burials, where, okay, like, little little Barky, little Fido, they got a tumor or something that's gonna cost thousands of dollars to remove. In good times, I'll be like, all right, I'll pay to get my dog healthy. In bad times, I tell my kid, "Oh, sorry, whatever. Fido has to go play on the other side of the fence." But I couldn't find any data on pet burials, or I looked at Google searches for like pet funerals and pet burials and stuff like that. It is true that spending on veterinarians does go down in recessions. Like they get hit really hard. But again, I couldn't find a consolidated index. Anyways,
Does pet ownership change during a recession? Like, just overall, are you less likely to get a pet in a recession?
that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one that could potentially look at. Yeah, I didn't look at that. I would think yes, but then you could also think that maybe there's a substitute where it's like times are bad, so I'm not going to have a kid, but I'll get a pet. So there might be two effects going on: income effect and a substitution effect. For econ nerds out there. All right, Ariel, let's go to the news. I don't know if you have the news.
I do have the news quiz up. You've already answered the first question. The Fed has lowered rates by 0.25%, Matt. So you already get a pass on that one.
Boom,
Okay.
1 point.
1 point. There are 4
I
more.
was sorry, just on that, they lowered rates. So I would, if there's one thing I would say I'm sure about, and listeners can hold me to account in 2 years or whatever, is we're going to have high inflation, because the inflation numbers that I showed are accelerating. They're not decelerating. And these sort of rate cuts, I don't really see the case for them. I know the labor market's soft, but I think the inflation signals are much more important than the labor market signals. And these rate cuts to me look like the Fed is basically going along with what Trump wants. And so it's a bit of Trump bullying the Fed. And so that anytime you have the independence of the central bank sort of threatened, that's going to lead to inflation. So to me, this seems like a repeat of the 1970s all over again. And the 70s kind of had this persistent inflation in the back half. So that would be my number one concern. Dear listeners, I don't know how you insulate yourself against inflation. Make sure you have a fixed rate mortgage, I guess. That's the best way. Those mortgage payments are going to get lower and lower as time goes on. Ariel, do you have a fixed rate mortgage? Come on, buy a house right now.
I'm a
Hurry up.
renter.
Okay.
So
all right.
I have no mortgage right now.
Okay. All right.
But
sorry,
if Mom Donnie wins the election, I will have no rent increases. So it will be.
There you go. All right. Sorry, I stomped all over your question one.
Okay. Next question related to the inflation bit. How much have retail coffee prices increased since last year? So do you want some numbers, Matt?
Yeah, give me some
Your
numbers.
options are 10, 20, 30, or 40%.
10, I should know this, right? Because I do buy a coffee every single day from Starbucks. So 10, 20, 30, 40. I think I saw a figure on this about the coffee prices, and they've skyrocketed up. At least the wholesale prices have skyrocketed up with the recent tariffs. So I'm going to go with 20%.
You would be correct, Matt. It is 20%. So Starbucks is not increasing the full 20%. They've tried to maintain their coffee prices. They buy coffee far ahead of time or like have futures contracts. So they've been able to keep prices from increasing as much in their stores, but overall, like coffee beans on the shelf at your grocery store are going up. So maybe to protect yourself from inflation, you're going to have to switch to tea.
No, never, Ariel. Perish the thought. Yeah, no, I'll drink coffee forever. Maybe I have to grow it, right? Maybe I just have to grow it in my backyard, subsistence farmer style.
Maybe so. My brother's taken to roasting his own beans, so I don't know how much money that saves, but I don't have a backyard to roast my coffee beans in. Okay, next one. Last week, someone briefly beat out Elon Musk as the world's richest person. Who was it?
Oh, God. I saw
this. You need some options.
I do need to, I will take some options. I did see it, and so when you give me the option, I'm sure I'll know it. But this was the theory. So he bought back a bunch of Tesla stock, and I think that was the theory was he was buying back Tesla stock so he could reclaim the number one spot. Was the reason for him buying back Tesla stock?
Musk's reason for buying back his own stock?
I saw that reason as like, this is why he bought it back, because he was annoyed that he wasn't number one, and he needs to be number one at all times.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, I guess this is, you can always take the bad faith or good faith interpretation. So your bad faith is, this egomaniac needs to be number one, so he buys back the stock. That sends a signal that he likes the stock, so the stock pumps, and then all of a sudden he's like back at number one. The good faith would be like, oh, maybe he just has faith in Tesla, and he's like wants to get back in on Tesla. Anyways, give me the options for who beat him. I think I know what it is, but I'll let me see the options.
Okay, Jeff Bezos, Larry Ellison, Taylor
Larry
Swift.
Ellison. It's Larry Ellison. It's Larry Ellison. It's Larry Ellison.
Boom, it is right? Larry Ellison.
Yeah.
So for listeners who aren't familiar with Larry Ellison, I actually had to look him up. He's the CTO and co-founder of Oracle, and they basically make AI infrastructure, like the data centers and the power that you need to run the AI. They have some insanely impressive contracts with, say, OpenAI on delivering power for them and computing power. So it's something like $455 billion worth of contracts with OpenAI. So it's massive, these contracts. And so his stock in Oracle really shot up when they had their earnings release last week.
Now he's back to number two, though. Sorry, Larry.
Now he's
I believe his children kind of run Hollywood too. So I think his children, I think David Ellison controls like CBS, and I think his daughter, for a long time was financing every art house film, I think, in Hollywood. Listeners can fact check me on that. But
okay. Well, now we're going to move. The last two questions have to do with automobiles, Matt. So we're shifting focus from AI to automobiles. So we're going to start in the US. Automakers haven't raised prices as much as analysts expected due to tariffs. Instead, they're eating the cost. What is the current average tariff cost per vehicle? Do you need some numbers?
Yeah, give me some numbers.
Okay. $1,500, $1,700, $1,900, or $2,300 per vehicle.
Wow. These numbers all seem actually kind of low to me. So these are all, if a new vehicle, I think the average new vehicle price is like in between 40 and 50,000. So these are what, like less than 10%. So they all seem kind of low to me. So I'm going to go with the classic multiple choice tactic of choosing C, 1900.
You were close, Matt, but it is actually $2,300. So had you gone with your strategy that they all seemed low, you should have picked the highest number.
I should have. That was my instinct, but then I was like, if I don't know, you got to go C, right? That's the classic multiple choice tactic.
It is.
Yeah.
But see, I know the classic multiple choice tactic, so I know not to make all of the answers C, Matt.
Dang. All right. Yeah, you're too skilled at test design.
Okay. Now we're going to talk about autos in China. So Reuters had this special long report about the Chinese auto manufacturers. They're facing a brutal price war with each other. And arguably, right, this is a very Econ 101 example. There's oversupply in the Chinese market. Okay. So they produced last year 27.5 million automobiles. And they're sitting in parking lots. They're discounting them. Some of them are being sold as used cars and then exported and then sold, even though they have zero mileage on them. But still, China has excess manufacturing capacity. So if they produced at maximum capacity, right, and they just disregard what's going to happen with prices, how many automobiles could they make next year? Okay, so these are estimates based on the manufacturing capacity. So if they went full capacity, this year was 27.5 million, could they make 35, 45, or 55 million cars next year?
35, 45, 55. I'm going to do the reverse and just go with the 55 million. Just go with the highest number.
It is indeed 55 million cars. So they can make double what they did this year, and they already have prices are dropping out. So as you mentioned, US prices are something like 40, 50,000. Average, cars are selling for 10,000, the equivalent of 10,000 in China. Like, they are significantly lower prices. They're not able to really export them, right? They're getting, not that they can't export them at all, but they're having a massive oversupply moment. And this is a result of China's industrial policy. So I did dig a bit into this, right? So what's been happening is, for listeners wondering why you would ever have this much overproduction here, the Chinese Communist Party announced, like, one of its big visions is auto manufacturing. They want to expand auto manufacturing. So provincial governments, local governments are incentivizing the creation of new automobile factories and businesses in their area. They're handing out lots of subsidies. They're handing out really great real estate deals. So everybody is trying to build. They're not responding to the profit. Like, most of these manufacturers did not make a profit last year, but they're all surviving because they're all getting money. They're all getting subsidies to help keep them afloat, because this is the way that local authorities are getting favor with the Communist Party. They're getting, they're rising up in the ranks. So they're all responding to this incentive of being in favor with the party. So it's very rational for them to keep producing all of these cars, even though they can't sell them, because what they're doing, they're maximizing for something different.
Yeah, they're getting these huge subsidies, and now the government's taking away the subsidies, right? And now these car companies are having issues.
Well, I think nationally they're doing that, but I think locally, that didn't seem to be what was going on. And I think it's because then it craters your entire local economy. Right now, you're going to wind up with very high unemployment rates, which is going to look bad for you.
Okay. Well, so, lipstick, we need to go to the lipstick index, the men's underwear index for China. See if they might be in for a recession soon. Okay. All right. I think I did 4 or 5, and I had the right instinct on the other one. So one of my better weeks. I know I got destroyed last week. New segment, Ariel. New segment. This one is called "The Economists Are Fighting," breaking down a beef between two. In this case, one economist and one non-economist. So in one corner, we have Nicholas Mueller, a professor of economic history. He wrote a sort of widely publicized paper. It got, at least in my circle, it got a lot of coverage on firewood prices. So he went back and he basically gathered all this data on firewood prices over time. This is sort of a classic in the genre. There's a famous paper that looks at the price of light over time. And it's a fun way to look at growth. There's another one that is like looking at the price of nails over time. And it's a fun way to look at growth because it basically tells you how much the economy changed. Like, I think nails were like 5% of the economy or something, back in the day. It was like huge, right? And that's one of the findings in this paper that will be contentious is he says 30% of GDP back in the early 1800s was firewood, according to his paper. Now,
okay, I have some questions about this before you keep going.
Go ahead.
So, before 1800, how many people were just chopping down their own firewood? How much of a market for firewood was there outside of, say, okay, so you have a big city like New York City, where definitely, running out of trees in your backyard. But if, as the U.S. expands and you have all these frontier states, you just gotta chop your own firewood, right? Like the Laura Ingalls Wilder, like, you can't go buy firewood. You just have to chop it. So how representative are these prices for...
Ariel, you are too good of an economist. You have correctly anticipated all the issues. So what he does is, yes, most people are chopping their own firewood, right? But he takes those city prices and he applies that to everybody who's chopping their own firewood to get this 30% estimate. Now, if anybody knows GDP calculations, this would seem weird to us in the present because, okay, the price seems wrong. Like, you want to use like the local price, but there is no local price. So he's just using the best one he has. The other thing that seems wrong is going to be you don't count in household production in GDP. You don't count that. So if you're counting this type of production, you probably want to count all the other informal production, which most of the economy is informal production back in the day. I'm whatever, sewing my own clothes. I'm cleaning my own house. I'm doing all the stuff myself. Everyone's sort of more self-sufficient.
You're growing your own vegetables.
Growing my own vegetables. Right. Exactly.
Or milking your own cow.
I'm curing my own disease. I'm taking a shot of whiskey for my tuberculosis, all that stuff. And so, it's sort of weird. Like, okay, we're going to count the firewood, but not all the other stuff. All right. So you've correctly anticipated the issues. All right. So on one side, we have Nicholas Mueller. That's on one side. On the other side, we have Eliezer Yudkowsky, I think is how you say his name. Eliezer Yudkowsky. Do you have any idea who this person? Eliezer Yudkowsky. Do you know this character?
No, but it's
Okay.
a biblical name, Eliezer.
All right. Well,
I think that's the correct pronunciation.
So, if you don't know who Eliezer is, he's like the leading AI like doomer, like in the world. Like he's the guy when ChatGPT came out and he was like bombed the data centers. Like the robots are coming, they're gonna kill us. Like we need to like he's like he's a Bay Area rationalist. He's big in the rationalist community. People like follow him like a guru, right? And so he's like bombed the data centers. I think his book just came out like literally today, and his book is called "If We Build It, Everyone Dies," something like that. So he's like this big time AI doomer, but very smart. And so basically on Twitter, he's like this 30% seems a little fishy to me, right? And then everyone like dogpiles him, like, oh, like you think you know more than Econ PhD and all this stuff. Now, to be fair, there's a lot of very, very smart commentators that were sort of on Yudkowsky's side, like my favorite Bern Hobart. He's just saying, it seems a little high. Nicholas Deckard, other PhD economist, who's like, 28% is a little high. And so to me, this sort of highlights, like, who do you trust, in times like this? Or who do you trust sometimes? The so-called experts or whatever, the like well-informed, seemingly smart layperson. And to me, I sort of usually will go with the Fat Tony approach. So Fat Tony approach is from Taleb's book. So, the expert might say, I have a coin. I'm going to flip the coin. And the coin comes up like heads. 5 times in a row. And then the question would be like, okay, what do you think it's going to come up in the 6th turn? And the expert would say, well, it's a coin, it's 50-50, don't let it fool you. Fat Tony is just sort of the informed layman says, I don't know, something up with this coin maybe. So maybe the coin's not on the up and up. So I like these Eliezer, however you say his name, Eliezer Yudkowsky, it's more like the Fat Tony. He's like, seems a little high. Like I'm not sure 30% of the economy is going to, firewood. And I saw this, you saw this a lot in the pandemic where you had these people, like these very, very like just super smart people that were not necessarily experts, and they would just dig in, and oftentimes their answers would be better. So the most famous or the best modeling of the coronavirus spread was from an MIT undergrad, like just an MIT undergrad who he just built a model, and so his model basically modeled it better than all the experts, right? And in fact, the experts models, Silicon Valley like asked for the experts models. They're like, hey, let's help, in the beginning of the pandemic, they're like, we'll help you with the spread. And I remember I listened to one Silicon Valley like tech person off the record said that when they got the code, they'd never seen worse written code like in their life, like from like the epidemiologists like code to model the spread. So my point is just like, I think it's hard in this environment to figure out who to trust. And so I think, you need to find your sort of lodestars of who to trust, but you should not just initially be skeptical of someone who's very smart, very talented, and, is maybe like a little bit outside their zone. However, so also we have Nicholas Mueller versus the AI doomer. Okay. So far everything's on the AI doomer side. Oh, these numbers seem high. Ariel, you pointed out, maybe the price is wrong. Maybe they, whatever. Maybe why are we counting home production? Now, what's interesting is I'm going to decide who wins this fight. And ultimately, so Yukowski, I think, is right to be skeptical, but ultimately I'm going to give it to Mueller, because what Mueller says when all this is pointed out, he says, yeah, it seems high. He's like, but I am following the standard practice in the literature. The standard practice in econ history literature is use the prices you have. And yes, when we're looking at an economy, we just add it to the existing GDP, which we know is like way undercounted. So he's like, everyone's like making fun of me for these high estimates. Everyone knew they were high estimates because it's like this is just the methodology that we do. It's like basically the best we could have. But none of us actually thinks it's 30%. We're just saying like, all right, yeah, the economy is super small because we weren't counting much, and so yeah, it's inflated. And so basically, he comes back. He's like, yes, we already knew these problems. I knew that we were. He said, I'm just following what the literature says. This is just how we do it. So I'm gonna award this. I'm gonna award the win to Mueller.
I don't know that this is a win-lose fight. Like, to me, this one isn't.
They both win. It's like
they both win, right? Like, this one isn't a zero-sum game. It's like, hey, actually, you should be pretty critical and like think critically about new data that you learn, right? Don't just take it without thinking about what are those implications. Is really 30% of production firewood, or is there some reason that those numbers sound a little strange? Like, and what's really the process behind that? So I think when you come out with data, I think the lesson here is really ask how you got there. Think about what else might have been happening, right? Cultural differences over time or methodology of production, and then understand what those numbers are trying to tell you, because they may be trying to tell you something different than what you think they're saying.
All right. So what you're saying, Ariel, basically is we have both winners. Okay. Both winners in their own arenas. The big loser was the media reports that reported the 30%. Basically, without questioning it, the initial, hey, 30% of early American economy was firewood. It was those people. Those three people are losers when this paper first came out. Okay, bringing back an old segment, not investment advice. I want to be clear, not investment advice. So there's a mayoral election coming up in your city, Ariel, in New York City, right?
Yes, there is.
You have Zoran over there, right? And he's running against Adams is still in the race, and Cuomo. Is that right? And we have there's a token Republican, I believe.
Yes, there is. I'm trying to come up with his name. There were 5.
Chisholm, I think is his name.
No, that's not.
It's not Chisholm. Okay, my bad. All right. Anyways, I saw this in Matt Levine's column that seemed crazy to me. So basically, on Twitter, Bill Ackman. Do you know who Bill Ackman is? He's like a hedge fund billionaire type.
Yes. Okay. He said he's going to move away if Mamdani wins, I believe.
Says he's going to move away, right? Doesn't like Zoran, okay? And he's like, hey, Eric Adams, like, drop out of this race already. Like, get out of here, like, we need to consolidate, okay? Then he says, here's what you can do, Eric Adams. Why don't you bet on Polymarket that you're going to drop out? Why don't you take $1 million, go on a Polymarket, a prediction market, and bet on yourself dropping out? Then you drop out, and then you get $1 million. Okay, he's like, why don't you just make $1 million by dropping out or whatever, however much you want, right? Now, the problem with that is when you go to bet on a prediction market, like if I bet $1 million on Eric Adams to drop out, that's going to move the whole market. The whole market will be like, this person knows something, right? Whatever. So that'll move the whole market, and I won't be able to make money. It'll move it to basically, yes, he's going to drop out, and I won't make any money. So you need somebody to take the other side of the bet. You need somebody on the other side of the bet who's saying, I'll bet $1 million that he doesn't drop out. Bill Ackman basically says, I'll be your Huckleberry. I'll bet on the other side. And that way, Eric Adams, you can make $1 million. And Ariel, what's your reaction to this? Bill Ackman is basically saying, let's go on Polymarket, my guy. You put $1 million on you dropping out. I'll put $1 million on you not dropping out. You drop out, you get yourself a cool $1 million. What is your reaction to this?
This sounds like A, insider trading, and B, bribery.
Right.
All at the same time. Like, why don't we just have Bill Ackman pay like Adams $1 million?
Yes.
Or right, the way politicians do this, I would like to put this in your, I guess you can't put it in the re-election campaign because specifically.
Yeah, I'll put it in I'll give it to your charity. Eric Adams, start a charity. Here's $1 million for your charity.
There were rumors he was going to take a position in the Trump administration. Adams.
Eric Adams or Bill Ackman,
yes.
Both, probably. The way things are going.
I don't know about that, but Adams specifically.
Okay. So, yes, the reaction is this seems like it should be illegal. Now, according to Matt Levine and Bloomberg, it's not illegal. So, like, in terms of like prediction markets, you can like basically bet on yourself. Like, you can totally just bet on yourself doing stuff. There's like no such thing as insider trading because it's considered a futures. And I guess in futures, there's no insider trading because like the people buying futures contracts have insider knowledge always. It's like Starbucks is buying future contracts on coffee. So of course they know what's going to happen. Like they have more info about what happens in coffee than other people. So according to Matt Levine, this is not yet illegal. Now, of course, listeners, it is illegal to actually bet on Polymarket if you're in the US. So I guess you would have to travel to the Bahamas or something, but not investment advice. I saw this as a sign that the billionaires in New York are maybe organizing a bit to try to swing this election and maybe they're a little bit more serious about swinging it than we had previously thought. So I personally went, not investment advice. I went on Polymarket and bet on Cuomo and then bet on Eric Adams dropping out. And so I have Cuomo at, I think there's a 16%. So I get like whatever, a huge payday if he drops out. However, since I made that bet, he's now down to 12. So I have lost money. I've lost money betting on Cuomo. So not investment advice. But if Eric Adams does drop out, I'll make money. I'll at least cover. I think I bet enough on Eric Adams dropping out that I would cover my Cuomo bet. So, not investment advice, listeners.
If I had to bet, think Zoran's going to win.
Well, he's like he's up to 88% favorite now. So yes, you would be in the it would be a semi safe bet, I guess, or you're with the consensus. So
the problem with Cuomo and Adams being in the same race is essentially that this is a like game of chicken, right? Whoever stays in longer should get all the vote from the other one, right? This is what is really happening here and why you want Adams to drop out or Cuomo to drop out. But I don't think either one of them, Matt, are electable. There's enough that voters are they arouse strong emotion in voters, right? Who blame Cuomo for sending COVID patients back to nursing homes or who associate Adams with corruption, right, from his trial that got dismissed. There's enough like very strong opposition that I don't think that there will be a cementing of opinion around either one of them. Right.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe I should have talked to the New Yorker before making my not investment advice bet. Is that what you're saying? The boots on the ground?
I think that would have been helpful, Matt. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well.
So I think, unfortunately,
that's why it's not investment advice.
The Zoran coalition is probably the strongest because his supporters are the most enthusiastic and excited, and Cuomo's supporters are like, yeah, it's a little bit better than Zoran, but nobody is like thrilled and enthusiastic to go turn out to the polls for him. And so
Yeah.
that's where, if you have this major difference in people who come to the polls and vote, I think that's going to be a big difference too.
Okay. All right. Quickly. Sorry, hold on a second. Econ Illiterate of the week. So this headline, this is from The Verge. Google says a typical AI text prompt only uses 5 drops of water. Experts say that is misleading. These experts are my Econ Illiterate of the week. What the experts are saying, Google's saying, look, you only use 5 drops of water when you do the AI, and the experts are saying, hold on a second, you're not counting all the water that it took to train the AI. The experts are making a classic sunk cost fallacy econ mistake. You never consider the fixed cost. The water that's used to train the model, that's gone. You already spent that. That's gone. It should not be counted in the cost of doing the query. That's a fixed cost. It's gone. It cannot be recovered. So sunk cost fallacy, the experts are falling prey to that. But I want to talk about this a little bit further because the experts here are just there's this whole class of experts. They're basically outrage entrepreneurs. And what they do is they supply these moral justifications for negative emotions. So what I mean by that is whenever something new comes out, people always hate it. Okay. They always see the new thing and they hate it. So they see the new thing, they see the AI, and they hate it because they're jealous a bunch of tech bros that look like douches got rich, or they're like, okay, I'm anxious about the future and I'm fearful of change. These are all natural human emotions. But then the experts come in and they tell you, no, this new thing, it's very, very bad. It kills the environment, hurts poor people, or it's racist in some way. And now I'm not jealous of the tech bros, or I'm not too lazy to learn a new skill. I'm a good guy. I'm not being emotional here. I'm being virtuous because now the expert has told me, no, you're being virtuous in your hate. But here is the thing, at least in this particular case, the AI is not a thirsty monster. It uses almost no energy. When you compare it to like average use, it's like nil. So I'm flashing these are the stats. These come from Hannah Ritchie, who does a lot of work on this. And these are overestimates. So this thing, AI, it's not really going to use a bunch of water. You don't need to worry about it wrecking the environment. And even if it was using a lot of water, that's what you got. AI haters, you're like hating on it because it uses water. Like that's like the best you can do. And this overall is synonymous with like a degrowth mindset that, okay, humans should just sit in the corner and just be sad all the time. But, really, I take the other way. Pro-human, pro-growth. Being human is about getting out there, discovering things, inventing, using water. It's okay. So the so-called experts who are hating on AI, you are economically illiterate, anti-progress, and anti-human. So I'm morally justified in disliking you. It's not because me, also an expert, is envious you got quoted in an article instead of myself. That's
Matt,
the Econ Illiterate.
For a second. I've got a question for you. Is that
Sure.
difference in electricity use attributable to air conditioning and laundry, like washer dryers? Is that the difference? I noticed a dramatic difference between UK and US energy use per person.
Oh, yes. So I don't know what it is, but yeah,
It's
in
about
the
3
US.
times. I think it said
Yeah.
12,000 kilowatts versus 34,000.
Yeah. So the US, in the Europe, they don't have air conditioning, don't believe in air conditioning. And so their deaths, they have all these crazy deaths due to not using air conditioning. And this is sort of to my bigger point is like, I don't think we should be using less energy. We should be trying to use more energy because that's how you get richer. You just want to use clean energy. You want to focus on making sure the energy doesn't have the negative externalities, which we have plenty of energy that is clean. But oftentimes people have the degrowth mindset where they're like, we need to like not do anything. We just need to like stop doing stuff. And like, that's what's going to be best. No, we're going to keep doing stuff. It's fun to do stuff. It's fun to go on a jet ski. It's fun to, use a super stoker. It's fun to use energy, You just want to make sure it's clean. So yeah, that's my econ. Any more questions about the Econ Illiterate of the week? No.
Nope. That's
right.
the only one.
Let's go to Econ in the Wild, our final segment. We talk about econ in our home life. Oh, Ariel, congratulations. You had a video this week. Your video came out on scaffolding.
Yes.
So your video talked about how New York has all these scaffolding, scaffolding everywhere, and it's like really ugly. And the reason for this, there's an economic reason for this, is basically because it's cheaper for the building owners to put up the scaffolding versus like fixing the facade. The question I got from a lot of people reaching out to me was, so how do other cities handle this? Like, so is this a uniquely New York problem where they have all this like scaffolding up, or do other cities have this, or why don't other cities have this issue?
So I tried to look up data on scaffolding in other cities, and it's relatively hard to come by. New York has a specific tracker where you can track them all, and you can see that there are, over 8,000 of them in New York, like almost any other time. So I think that's true today. I haven't looked at it in a little bit. But in places, so part of the problem in New York is that the buildings are really dense and many of them are old. So it's these old terracotta buildings that crumble after, over 100 years. The facade is worn down by, rain and pollution and, whatever else is out there in the New York City air.
Spider-Man.
Yeah. And so the one comparison that I did hear in a podcast when I was doing research for this was Chicago. So Chicago doesn't have so I could never find what's the reference number of scaffolding in Chicago, but they have a more sensible policy about scaffolding. And some of those policies are in the process of being adopted in New York. So one of them is that they choose how often your building gets examined for facade problems is based on what type of materials your building has and how old it is. So in New York, it's every building every 5 years, no matter if you completed a renovation project last year. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't restart the clock. The inspectors are coming back for you, and you're going to have to put up the scaffolding because they have to look at it in person. For Chicago, it's based on new versus old buildings and based on building materials. So then, it's like every 12 years, if your building is deemed to be less likely to be deteriorating, let's say. So New York passed a law recently where now the Department of Buildings is supposed to review and do a study and then extend the review to somewhere between 6 and 12 years from the current 5. But none of those regulations right now are known. So it's a movement in the right direction. I still wonder if that's the right time frame. The other thing that Chicago does that New York does not is that it allows the use of drones to map out and inspect the facades. You still, I think, have to have somebody touching the walls at some point. But you can now with technology, you can make a really cool map of the buildings. You can then predict where there's likely to be weaknesses because of exposure to rain or wind or elements or, other things. And so you could predict where you're most likely to have problems and kind of use that to then target intervention earlier. Those drone permitting in New York is a whole issue. That makes it really difficult. But part of it is the density, right? In other places, you don't have buildings so close together that you have hundreds of people walking right underneath 100-story buildings where bricks are likely to fall off the wall.
It seems like it's a combination of materials, like sort of over-regulation in terms of like looking at it, and then density combined with height is why it's just a uniquely New York problem, sounds like, right? Or
yes, that would be my response.
Okay, Econ in the Wild. So, well, congrats on your first video. My dad said he loved it, and he hates everything. So there you go. You have at least one fan. Other Econ in the Wilds, other Econ in the Wilds, Ariel, from the week.
Yeah. So last week I think it was I was telling you about my problem finding books to read. And how do you find books to read? So I realized after that conversation that I had an answer here, Matt, and that was ChatGPT. So then I went to ChatGPT and I told it all of my requirements about reading and what I wanted to read and what I wanted to be different and what I'd read so far that I didn't want repeat, recommendations for. And so it gave me a whole list, which was great. But now I've run into the problem of incentives, Matt. So I live in New York. I have a small apartment. I try when I can to pick my books up from the New York Public Library because that allows me to like read more than I would otherwise and then not have those books taking up space in my apartment. And I value those physical copies. But New York, since the pandemic, stopped charging fines. So, Matt, what do you think happens to books when you stop charging fines for late returns at the library?
Why would I ever return a book?
Why would you ever return a book? So, about half of my list of books that I was really excited to read, I am person 79 or 109 on these waiting lists, which I don't have any sense of how fast they'll move because there's no reason to return the book on time.
Right. Or return the book at all. So surely the New York Public Library has realized this is a problem and they're going to reinstitute late fines, or?
So there's a difference here, Matt. So they don't charge a late fine. After so many days of it being late, they will charge you a book replacement fee. So if you never return the book, you get charged for the price of replacing the book. But if you bring the book back eventually, then and you can't check out books if you owe more than $100. So if you owe more than $100 worth of books that you haven't checked out,
You get cut off.
You get cut off from checking out new books. So you can keep those, but you can't check out new books. So it's really once you've kept $100 worth of books for a very long time that you have to bring them back to get a new set of books. But this is much delayed compared to, like daily fines for not reading. But I have mixed opinions about it because I do think that encouraging reading and subsidizing reading is probably a valuable public service and probably has positive externalities. And so even though it messes up the incentives, it is something that I'm okay with saying this is probably, right, this is the purpose of the public library is to encourage reading.
Right.
And so removing the late fine...
But it seems like this policy has limited your reading, though, so because the books are not available. So
it is true.
Maybe tweak the policy a bit.
First,
I want to talk about...
I think I've got an idea, Matt. I've got an incentive idea. If you return your books on time, you get to hop people on the wait list who haven't returned books.
Yes. That's
a non-monetary incentive.
Yes. Your place on the wait list should be a combination. It should be the order in which it was received, but also how good of a borrower you are. Yes. So
how likely you are to return.
Yeah, you reward the good borrower. Well, that's a good idea. I'm sure that'll just take a little bit of programming that the New York City Public Library can do pretty quickly.
We may have to talk to the Google execs on 8th Avenue. We may have to ask
Larry.
them.
Oh yeah, I thought get on the case. So when you brought up ChatGPT, and I forgot to mention this. I do think it's very instructive in terms of how to use ChatGPT. And so that we talked about that Firewood paper earlier, and I forgot to bring it up in the context of but I'll bring it up now because I do think it is crazy. So that Firewood paper, right? And it had that not error, but it had that sort of weird stat in it. Okay. So I said, I wonder if ChatGPT would spot this. So I uploaded the paper to ChatGPT and I said, hey, is there a fatal flaw in this paper? Right. And it immediately spit back at me like a standard critique of an econ paper. The regression for this will be gobbledygook for, non-econ nerds, but the identification is not well defined and there's a omitted variable bias, just like standard criticism of an econ paper. And I was like, this paper, by the way, has none of that in it. Like it's just firewood prices. So I was like, mother effer didn't even read the paper. So I was like, ChatGPT, you didn't even read the paper. Like, what's going on here? Like, I asked you for the fatal flaw. You just clearly are just spitting out like a general econ criticism. You didn't even read the paper, my guy. And then it's like, oh, sorry, my bad. Let me read the paper. So then it's like thinking longer for a better answer, Then it reads the paper and it comes back perfect. Oh, the 30% seems to be overestimate due to, he's using urban prices and it's like a perfect answer. Its first answer though was complete trash. And so this is just like, I don't know, the world we're in. You got to be very careful. You have to have a little bit of knowledge. You can't just blindly trust the AIs. But I thought that was interesting. Now, and I find that all the time when I upload a paper to it and ask it questions about the paper, its initial response almost evinces that it didn't even read it. Okay. My econ in the wild, Ariel, these past couple of weeks, I have achieved a years long dream. Okay. My wife and I, we go to trivia almost every week. We were going trivia almost every week on a Tuesday, right? Our team is me, my wife, our child. Okay, great time. We go to the brewery, we play, we answer the trivia. It's a great time. But my wife and I, we always wanted to join another trivia team, right? We wanted to join a bigger team. And so we've been trying to make friends. We would try to talk to the other teams. They just cold shoulder. They're just complete jerks, right? I asked ChatGPT, come up with a 10-point plan, how I can join a trivia, how I can get incorporated into a trivia team. All right. ChatGPT has the plan. I started to enact it, but then we stopped going for a while. Anyways, we finally joined a team because there was this one team that my wife kind of knew the people. She kind of knew them, and they needed to win in order to get entry into like this bigger tournament. So my wife was like, hey, we'll join your team to help you win, right? And then we joined the team and they won, and then we got interest in this other bigger tournament, and then we got like, we placed. So they were like, we're permanent members of the team now, right? It's awesome. We achieved our dream, okay? My son hates it. My son absolutely hates it, okay? Because before, he's hanging out with daddy and mommy. He's hanging out with daddy and mommy. We're chatting. He's the center of attention. She's the only child. Now this team's got like 8 people. Daddy and mommy are talking to the other people. We're not really paying attention to them. In fact, aforementioned ChatGPT, that's who my son's talking to. It's like, hey, Dean, talk to ChatGPT, all right? Ask whatever questions you talk to the robot, okay? So he hates it. So he hates it, all right? So what does he do? What does he do this week? We're supposed to go to trivia. I'm too sick, guys. Sorry. I'm sick. We can't go to trivia. Got to stay home. And so he's basically faking being sick to get out of going to trivia after my wife and I finally achieved our dreams of being on this team. My question to you, Ariel, where is the econ here? I was thinking there's no econ, but then I discovered there's a very clear, very, very clear econ comparison.
Don't know where the econ comparison is, but Matt, since your in-laws live with you, if you're really that sick, you should have him go to bed, stay with the in-laws, and then go to trivia. Practical recommendation.
Look, you don't know what a sweet talker my son. He's a sweet, sweet talker. He's a sweet, sweet talker, right? So trust me, he sweet talked my wife into staying home. And if my wife stays home, I'm staying home. There's no way I'm going there without the wife and the child, right? So yeah, so he's just a sweet talker. So here's the econ. My wife and I, we would do fine. Like we would never place. We would get like 4th place. It was generally what we would get when it was just me and my wife, right? Once we joined this team, it's like every week we are like 1st or 2nd place with this team, right? And it's clear gains to trade, absolute advantage. There's one person on the team who knows a lot of music. There's another person on the team who knows pop culture. I know a lot of like history, and if there's never an econ question, but if there's like nerd questions, I know these questions. And so it's classic absolute advantage. This team is greater than the sum of its parts because of all the people, bringing their different skills, just like the world trading system, just like globalization. Okay. So who's my son in this comparison then?
He's Donald Trump.
Okay. He's Donald Trump, right? He hates it. He hates the globalization. So he throws a fit, right? Hey, great talker, just like Trump, Mom, I'm very sick. Like it's just, so that was my realization. My realization was, the econ this is specialization. And oh my God, my son is Trump throwing a tantrum over how well this globalization is working. He prefers autarky. He prefers it when it was just our nice little country having to produce everything, even though we were much poorer, never placing. All right. That is the econ in the wild. My econ in the wild. My son's Donald Trump. So I'm going to start calling him that. I'll start calling him Donald Trump. We'll see how much my wife likes that. All right. Any other econ in the wild, Ariel?
No, I'm out of econ in the wild at the moment. I'm going to have to come up with new ones for next week.
All right, listeners and viewers, that is Econ Nerds Live for the week. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for watching. Share, like, subscribe, and we will see you next week.